I'm going to come and sit down. I was born in Bangladesh in 1959, and I spent my youth mainly in Bangladesh. But while I was young, I had been to England a couple of times with my father because he was doing his PhD course and then came on a scholarship. But when I went back at the age of about 12, there was a war between India and Pakistan because Bangladesh wanted to be separate, East Pakistan at that time, from Pakistan and become independent. And so I was caught up in that war. And my father, for right or wrong reasons, supported Pakistan against the breakup or against the independence. So we were seen as collaborators with the Pakistan army, and he was then put in prison. So while my father was in prison, I kind of stayed at home and self-taught myself. And we witnessed a lot of violence before, during, and after that period of time. But in 1975, he fled, or 74, he fled to England as an asylum seeker, if you like. And I followed him in 1975 with the rest of my family. That's how I ended up being in England. So I think by the time I came to the UK, I'd witnessed a lot of death and destruction, which included, of course, my own brother was killed, my elder brother was killed, along with a host of other relatives, 22 of them. So with that background, I went to school, did my normal at that time O-levels, GCSE and A-levels and so on. But then the war started in Lebanon, and there was an Israeli invasion, and I wanted to join the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization. So you could say I had within me a kind of a streak, a kind of a desire to be involved more than just in terms of charity, but in a physical manner. Perhaps because of the war that I had experienced when I was young and the rough life I had before I came to England. My mother talked me out of it, as most mothers would try to, I'm sure, when they find out their child is going to a dangerous way, in a dangerous way. But then I went to college. After my A-levels, I went to college to do a degree. Kingston Polytechnic at that time is now a university. And I came in contact with the Muslim Brotherhood. And I think that's quite significant given my background. Although I come from a kind of well-to-do family, by that time my father had found employment in Saudi Arabia. And by any standard, he was earning a lot of money, we can say, although we were not rich. But compared to other people, tax-free income at that time in 75, I could say he was comfortable enough to buy me a house without a mortgage, cash. Things were cheaper, I understand, but still. But because of my contact with the Muslim Brotherhood, I became enthused with a kind of idealism, an ideology that Muslims used to be great, that we had power or supremacy. We have lost it, not only because we become less devoted to God, but also because the non-Muslims or them have exploited our differences and our weakness and taken over us, so that them and us was there. So Muslim brother activism, their literature, their kind of incentivizing my activism, all of this led to me volunteering for the jihad in Afghanistan. Because very soon after that we had the Russian invasion of Afghanistan. So by about 1979, I'm kind of getting into Islamism, which is a political version, interpretation, and a program to establish a political order by means of religion, recruiting the faith for its purposes. So I make a distinction, a very clear distinction between political Islam and Islam as faith. Many Muslims naively get caught in political Islam because it provides solutions or talks about problems and how we can solve it. Many non-Muslims also confuse Islam as faith with political Islam. Anyway, so I kind of began to get involved in the Afghan jihad, and then eventually I made my way there. So that's how it started. My heart was moved by the suffering of the Afghan people. Even in those days with VHS cassettes and what have you, we still had access to information. So I had idealism, I had Islam as a faith, I had a disposition or a heart or a character which empathized with people's suffering. I want to help. And then I found that there is a way to support those people in an Islamic manner, which can bring about change than just talk about things or just pray or give charity or create awareness. These are the other four, mainly the alternatives we have. The fifth one is we can fight. So I'm young, I've suffered, I've seen people suffer. So why wouldn't I do the ultimate, which is to fight, to save people from suffering, as well as attack or repulse those who are enemies of both the people and God, because they're communists. I severely misunderstood, of course, what communism was about. I, of course, made the terrible mistake of presuming that local Afghanis who had supported the communist or socialist program were not atheists and giving up on God. They were looking for justice. So I misunderstood all that, and in a simplistic manner, as always happens with extremists, conflated that with godlessness. So I went there to do the ultimate, to fight, to save people. I took sides, didn't understand internal politics or differences, and I ended up getting caught up in jihadism, fueled by religion and supported by idealism, Islamic ideology or Islamist ideology. Regrettably, I got involved in that for 15 years. That's the long and short of my story. Otherwise, I'm a software engineer by profession. I've got a degree, a master's in computer science. Subsequently, I did a master's in Islamic studies and a diploma in Arabic. But my profession is software engineering. I worked at various companies, happily married. The first time I went, I had 6 children. So I wasn't exactly suffering from poverty and other vulnerabilities people talk about, and those are factors. But I was motivated by my quest to seek martyrdom, to die in the way of God. And what could be better than to fight on the side of the oppressed, to relieve them from the oppressors. And all of these things are like labels and terms, but they are very complicated, and we don't understand them well. And we lack realism. We kind of try to simplify. And so just how much of that was sincerely trying to help people, how much of that was because of my traumatic background. I never felt traumatized. People told me later on, that's your background, you must have had trauma and all that. But I must have undergone various kind of experiences which are deemed to be highly problematic for a natural development of a human being. Death, destruction, starvation, what have you. The missing father figure, he's in prison. Also, how much of that was because of my personality? Maybe I liked guns, I just like fighting, war films and so on. So when you get older and you begin to think more, you not only reflect on the things that went on in life, for which you took sides or became passionate about, you begin to do self-study as well. You contemplate and then mellow down and think, well, exactly where were my loyalties? And so through education, through reflection, and through other people's kindness, simply tolerance they accommodated me. There will always be bad people and bad experiences, but on the whole, the vast majority, are nice. And they leave you untroubled if you don't trouble them and become nasty towards them, out of hand. So the British public, my line manager to somebody in the street, they are always nice people. They know who I am, because I used to dress up in my camouflage gear. I'm giving my fiery speeches, let's go and fight the kuffar, let's kill the Russians, what have you. I'm talking about politics and questioning the government, the system, and conspiracy theories. But you begin to understand that no, there are alternatives. There are other ways to be helpful. So I understood Islam deeper. I studied a lot. I accepted different opinions and began to marvel at people's intelligence and the intellect, not just reading my books and my scholars. So I broadened my horizon, deepened my knowledge, self-reflection, became more realistic. And so all I do now is channel my energies into activities which are constructive and positive. So that's my story, I think.